Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at Venus's entrance into the sign of Scorpio, as well as the major aspects that Venus will be making while in the sign of Scorpio in this final month of the calendar year. Venus is just coming off from a square to Pluto over this past weekend, so there's been no shortage of Venusian symbolism in the sky right now to be looking at. We spent a lot of time last week looking at Venus, Pluto, and what might come from that aspect. Venus comes into the new week entering Scorpio, and immediately there are several aspects that are coming along the way now that we can start thinking about. So that's our goal for today. Before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, share your comments and reflections if you've got them. We love hearing from you guys. It's always interesting to see what you guys have to say, what you guys are experiencing, to create some community around the posts. It helps the channel to grow. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. As you guys know, right now, we are trying to raise the support of 1,777 backers in our 10th annual Kickstarter campaign. This is a fundraiser we do the last 40 days of every calendar year in order to support this channel, my team, and all of the good work that we do for the year ahead. This is a 5-day-a-week, year-round podcast. I have been doing a version of this podcast, this programming year-round for 12 years now. Only 10 of them have we done a Kickstarter with. But the success of this channel really depends in great part on all of you who take a minute to pop on over to the Kickstarter and donate whatever you can. You can find the link to the Kickstarter if you would like to donate, if you haven't yet already, and a big thanks to everyone who has. But you can find that link pinned to the top of the comment section or in the description of this video. You go over there, or you can go to the website, nightlightastrology.com. We have a tab that says Kickstarter 2024. You can go over there too. Right now, we have, as the time I'm recording this, we have 283 backers. We still need 1,494 by New Year's Eve. So we have a long ways to go. We could really use your support. If you love the content that we create, if you get something good out of it, please consider supporting us. Today, before we get into our content of the day, I want to talk about 3 things that my content seeks to accomplish, really that our whole team values, as there is a whole team of people that goes into creating and producing this content year-round. So these are the 3 questions that I would have people ask themselves when they watch our content year-round. We may not hit these, we may not hit the mark every single day, but do we do so, more often than not? I hope so. That's the intention. 1, did you think about something differently? When you watch the programs that we provided Monday through Fridays, maybe even just a couple times a month, or hopefully a couple times a week, hopefully every day, did you start thinking about something differently in your life, an experience, a pattern, something that you've been thinking about? Were you able to shift your thinking? One of the great goals of astrology is to help us become multivalent, multidimensional, and archetypal in the way that we look at ourselves, the way that we look at experience, the way that we look at the flow of events. And so the goal of this channel is to give you options when it comes to interpreting your own experiences, when it comes to relating to your own thoughts and feelings, when it comes to looking at the way things unfold and having different angles from which to understand or relate to things. One way of asking that question is, did this content help you think about something differently? If it did, even if that was ultimately a part of a process that led you in some totally different direction, does this content participate in stimulating reflection about your life? If so, then we feel like we've accomplished something really positive. And number 2, did you notice something that you hadn't been seeing? One of the things that astrology should be helping us do, maybe not every day, but often enough, is to notice a pattern or to notice an archetype popping up through our experiences. I've been going through things somewhat unconsciously, but through the language of astrology and maybe the Venus-Pluto transit we've been studying or something else, suddenly you're able to go, oh my God, I'm right in the midst of a transit. And the way that, Adam, or the way that, Alex, or whatever, one of our programs helped you see something that you've been experiencing through the language of astrology that you otherwise hadn't been seeing, even though it was right there. That is one of the best values that comes from astrology, because it helps you when we can identify the archetypal in the midst of our experiences. We bring our experiences into an eternal context, and the soul delights in that context. It's like, yes, I'm a part of something that's timeless and eternal. And that it's relieving, even if we still have to go through the stresses and pressures of life, to be able to contextualize what's happening to us and notice within it a pattern, an archetype that we didn't before, is somehow liberating. So did this content help you do that at all this year, somewhat regularly, hopefully, hopefully more often than not, every day, I hope. But that's the intention that goes into the work for sure. Number 3, did you learn something new about an astrological archetype? I assume that a lot of people that come here are, learning about astrology. Some people more seriously than others. Some it's a hobby. Some it's part of your spiritual transformation or healing work that you're doing. Some people that are really, really serious. This is like a passion. Maybe you want to be professional. Did you learn something new about a sign, about a planet, about a house, about an aspect, about a planetary combination? Did you learn something new about a Greek myth or an etymology of a word or something? Does this channel give you new things to think about as a student or even a hobby student of astrology? If so, then we've accomplished something that we set out to accomplish in every video that we make. We try to have original content that helps you think differently, notice things you haven't been noticing, and learn something new about archetypes and astrology. If we accomplish any of those things, then, and you value those kinds of things, then I hope you'll take a moment to consider pitching in and being one of our backers this year. Help us get to 1,777 backers. Pick up a lecture, pick up a reading that we only offer exclusively, or pick up 50% up to 75% off all of our online courses. We'd love to have you come study with us and go even deeper into astrology. You can also, those class passes don't ever expire. You can transfer or share. You could take 2 classes, give one to a friend. It's a great deal. So we really appreciate everyone who's already pitched in, and hopefully we have earned your support. If you haven't yet pitched in, and you'll head over to the Kickstarter through, again, the link is at the top of the comments section or in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you will enjoy today's look at Venus and Scorpio and all of Venus's upcoming aspects in this last month of the year. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Venus is up to this month. There are a number of transits that Venus is making, and we're going to look at each one of them in succession and kind of track out the journey of Venus over the course of the last month of the year. The reason to do this is that Venus in Scorpio is the potent Venus. This is one of the more interesting placements for Venus. We're going to talk about why Venus is considered to be in her detriment or exile. I want to talk a little bit about what that means and what the opportunity of the transit is, despite the challenge of that label and the challenge that the presence of Venus in a Mars ruled sign presents us with. And then we're going to look at all the aspects, like I said, and I think you'll find that we're in for a real interesting ride with Venus this last month of the year. Okay, well, let's start by we're going to track Venus in Scorpio through the month of December, starting with her ingress, which is happening today. So the ingress of Venus into Scorpio happens this afternoon, Monday, December 4th. And I'm going to put the real-time clock up so that you can see it. So you'll notice Venus entering Scorpio here. This is about 1:30 in the afternoon Central Time on December 4th. That's Monday today. And then let's watch what Venus is going to do. The very first thing that Venus does is, and remember, recently Venus just came off the square with Pluto, so it's interesting to see Venus enter Scorpio right after hitting the square with Pluto. We're going into some deeper and more subterranean territory for the goddess. So anyway, December 5th, which is coming up tomorrow, this is the first aspect of the month, Venus is going to trine Saturn. So this is our first contact between Venus in Scorpio and any other planet. And I think this one is really interesting. Trines are of the nature of Jupiter, which usually means that they are supportive. So what does a supportive watery trine between Venus and Saturn look like? Well, I think about opportunities for emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. To use our emotional intelligence or to demonstrate emotional maturity because we're capable of doing so is implied by this transit. But the need to develop emotional intelligence, emotional security, emotional maturity in any situation, whether it's in a relationship or at work or just within ourselves, is also offered by this transit. So when you get a nice connection between these two planets, you think of the better significations of Venus and Saturn, a kind of refined, mature, elegant, serious, but sensual Venus combined with Saturn. You get the feeling of a flowy, emotional, deep, and maybe a little spicy Venus in the sign of Scorpio. But you think about the compassionate, well-boundaried Saturn in Pisces. So you put those together and you have the potential for a kind of a signature of wisdom, healing, sensitivity, flow, sensual, erotic, but well-boundaried. And that's a nice combination. So that's a first contact that comes out this month. Now, I want to take a minute to talk a little bit about why Venus in the sign of Scorpio was said to be in her detriment or exile. The reason for that is really simple. Anytime that you take Venus and put it in a Mars ruled sign, it's opposite to its own home sign. So Venus in Scorpio is opposite to its home sign in Taurus, and Venus in the sign of Aries is opposite its home sign of Libra. So the same thing is true when you take Mars and put it in Libra or Mars and put it in Taurus. You are, the sign tells us what kinds of archetypal qualities the planet in the sign is going to conform to, or it's like a lens through which it sees or expresses itself. So when you put Venus in a Mars ruled sign, Venus, the goddess of grace, harmony, love, beauty, sensuality, flow, is in a sign that is associated with conflict, war, aggression, competition, hostility, winning, dominating, and cutting and separating, severing, rather than blending or harmonizing things together. Mars tends to cut things apart. So that's interesting. And that does not mean that there's something inherently bad about this placement. It's a designation that ancient astrologers had to mark a kind of archetypal tension that we as humans find challenging. We find it challenging because these are qualities that can easily polarize. For example, what are the stereotypes that you associate with Venus and Scorpio? Oh, that person's too intense in love. They're confrontational and aggressive in their relationships. They tend to go for the jugular when it comes to, having heart-to-heart discussions. There's something edgy or not entirely stable, or, something that feels a little aggressive about Venus and Scorpio, maybe possessive or clingy, or even, someone who might hold a grudge if you don't act or behave exactly like they want to. So you're just getting that little stinger of the Scorpion mixed up with Venus. But that does not make Venus and Scorpio bad, right? There's a big difference between saying that some of these qualities are challenging for the kind of natural expressions of Venus to deal with, but that doesn't mean that they aren't beautiful and necessary, right? So Venus in the sign of the Scorpion is a fierce lover. Venus in the sign of the Scorpion is a deep and profound, emotionally catalyzing friend. Venus in Scorpio holds space for the deeper, more complex dynamics of power, will, desire within relationships, within art, within friendships. So these are beautiful things that also take place when Venus travels through the sign of the Scorpion. Venus in the Scorpion is not just about, people who create drama in relationships all the time. They just can't help themselves, and you don't ever quite feel stable when you're with someone who has Venus in Scorpio. Like, you could do something that pisses them off, and then it's drama all over again. That's a shadow of Venus in the sign of the Scorpion. But so too is that person who loves deep, who loves truly and authentically, who demands a kind of honesty and authenticity, and to show ourselves in what we really are. So sort of like a naked quality that Venus and Scorpio not only requires, but it does well with, And so Venus and Scorpio are, you can get the possessive and the needy and the clingy and the drama loving and so forth, but you can also have one of the most loyal, deep, respectful, and stable kinds of love that exist in whether friendships or someone you work with, or a friend or a family member, or a lover. So Venus in the sign of the Scorpion overall, as we're going to look at a several more transits that are coming this month is something that wants us to go deeper and wants us to get into the places where love is red and burns. It's a little bit of a fire. It's like I said earlier, it's spicy. So as that happens, I like that right off the bat, as Venus enters the sign of the Scorpion, there's instant connection with Saturn, who's just turned direct in Pisces, which is the exaltation of Venus. There's a kind of romantic, compassionate, wise, mature, well-boundaried trine to Saturn that Venus has right away. And so I think we're going deep, but we're looking at things that are, provocative, but we can hold space for. We can be grounded enough to work through what's coming up, especially on an emotional level, early in the month here and early this week. So, okay, that's the first one. I want to walk you through the others because there really are a number of other very interesting aspects this month. The next one is Venus opposing Jupiter. Now we're going to take this forward a little bit to December 9th. And you'll see here that Venus in Scorpio, this is this Saturday, December 9th, is opposing Jupiter in Taurus. Now, I'll never forget, you guys may remember this video from some years back. I was at Disney World. I think it was we went there for a wedding one time. A friend of Ashley's was getting married and they did their wedding at Disney World because I guess that's where they originally met or dated or something. Anyway, it was really cute. It was a fun wedding, and Virginia was really little. Ashley was pregnant with Summer, if I remember correctly. Anyway, we went to Disney World and Venus was opposing Jupiter. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. There's like every single shop, every line, every single thing you do is meant to rob you of all of your money. If you've ever been to that accursed place, I'm just kidding. I have a lot of fond memories. But I mean, it is like set up to like strip you of your money, give you like sugar comas, and and probably put on like a couple of pounds. So it is just decadent and indulgent and expensive and very magical at the exact same time. It's imaginative, it's sensual, it's otherworldly, it makes you laugh and delight in things. Well, with Venus in the sign of the Scorpion opposing Jupiter, who is in Venus's sign, there is reception between the two of these planets. So the likelihood is that they're able to work together a little bit better than your average opposition. But one thing to keep in mind is that this is a signature of extravagance or indulgence or expensive taste. It's sort of where luxury meets lust. And so you do have to be careful of the kind of over the top Venus-Jupiter, Venus getting blown up and exaggerated by Jupiter, and really having to look potentially at desires and pleasure and where they meet our principles, the principles that we have in our life that are meant to mediate our desires so that our desires do not become problematic, that they don't become the source of our downfall, destruction, disease, or suffering. And they can. We know that they can. We know that the shadow of Taurus, as we've talked about in videos earlier this year, is the Minotaur, the kind of hungry, ravenous beast that lives beneath the castle, the luxurious castle. So, Venus opposite Jupiter is an opportunity for us to look very carefully at the shadows of desire, at the shadows of what we crave, and where there is an overflow of something, although it may, and I'm going to get to the positive on this, but it may be a very positive thing. Still, look at the shadows with Venus opposite Jupiter. Now, on the other hand, what I like about this is Jupiter in Taurus is very sunny and stable. And in a way, Scorpio is just as stable, but it's stable in a different way. So when I think about this combination, and I think about the taboo, the kind of provocative taboo material that Venus and Scorpio will often bring up, and I think about pairing it with reception to Jupiter and Taurus, I think, wouldn't it be interesting if something that happens is we see the things that we are afraid of sharing with others? Well, I really like this, or I love that, or I'm attracted to this or that, but we're going to bring it out, show it, and normalize it. We're taking something that we have placed into the basement below the castle because we think it's inappropriate or there's something taboo about it, and we're bringing it out into the light of day, and we're normalizing it and bringing it into the family of things that we love, that we are open about. That would actually be very fitting for the kind of taboo, debilitated Venus coming into an opposition with sort of sunny side Jupiter in Venus's home sign. So I almost get the feeling of like redeeming something that we have thought didn't belong or was too complicated or dark or whatever. And that's often the problem with Venus and Scorpio is not what she loves or what she desires or the complex, deep, intense stuff that Venus does in Scorpio. It's the way we judge it. You know, Venus is not always judged fairly. It's like, for example, Venus in Scorpio is like saying, well, a woman shouldn't have a temper. Right? Well, that's not fair, you know? So the kinds of things that we find to be not appropriate for Venus may be brought up or out in a way that is more accepting, or we can learn, or we can find some kind of cooperation or incorporation of the deeper and more turbulent energies of Venus in Scorpio. And why not? So Venus opposite Jupiter is also, it turns up the volume on pleasure, desire, appetites, instincts. And so it can really be quite a charming transit when it comes to like sex, love, marriage, relationships. Kind of amplifies the romantic energy. This is a spicy romantic energy, of course, with Venus in the sign of the Scorpion. So kind of look for those things overall. Now, if we pull this out draw this out a little bit more on the 21st, see, throughout the month, Venus has several very important moments. The next one is on the 21st, where Venus will now move through the opposition to Uranus. And if you thought the Jupiter opposition was spicy and interesting, you know, it'll be even more spicy and interesting with Uranus, because now we have all the provocative qualities of Venus in the sign of the Scorpion that we've already discussed, hitting an opposition to Uranus, the god of revolution, awakening, inventiveness, originality, and breakthroughs, sudden, unexpected twists and turns. And we have the opposition between the two. Well, I mean, if you thought Venus opposite Jupiter was sort of sexy and spicy, this can be very provocative, but also very freeing and liberating. Think about a desire that you have that you've judged to be not so okay. And it, you know, you put that desire in an opposition with Uranus, and Uranus is sort of like, I don't, you know, what was the, oh God, I'm in love, and I don't care who knows about it. It's from a kid's movie that my little daughter runs around quoting sometimes. I'm trying to remember, what movie was that in? Anyway, I was one of the, maybe it's like a Disney movie or something. So Venus just says, I don't, you know, when it hits the opposition to Uranus, it says, I don't care. I want what I want. And I don't give a damn what anyone thinks. I don't give a damn what you're telling me I can or can't do. I'm going to do it. Venus opposite Uranus is also about breakthroughs in art, in creative self-expression, in fashion, in style, in terms of it's experimental when it comes to sex and love. It's also, you know, it can be about the flame that gets really hot and really intense because you've poured some rocket fuel on the fire, but that burns quickly, it burns bright, and then it burns out. So, you know, Venus opposite Uranus will give us some fireworks that are pretty loud, but they don't always last very long. That's important to remember. It's kind of like a dazzling display, but, you know, you have to be careful that you don't think that high or that sort of peak moment for Venus is going to last forever. Kind of just remember that what it awakens, if you tap into what it awakens, a creative vision or a direction that you want to go in and explore, that's perfect. But if you try to ride the feeling and think that this feeling, this moment, this excitement is going to last forever, it won't. All revolutions have their moment of sparkle and glory, and then the revolution leads to maintaining or sustaining the new things that were introduced through the revolutionary impulse. So you just have to remember that. It's also very disruptive when it comes to relationships and relational norms. It's like it likes to provoke change in relationships, which for some people will be very destabilizing, while for others it might be just the spark you need to make some really healthy and exciting and interesting changes. So that is Venus opposing Uranus on the 21st. Now we're going to visit these when we get closer to the time, but I just wanted to mention it. Now, last but not least, on Christmas, if you are someone who celebrates, even if you don't, it's happening on December 25th. Venus trines Neptune. So last but not least, Venus, right around this time, will go through the I have a pop-up dinging here. Venus will go through the trine to Neptune. Now, I very much like the trine to Saturn at the beginning. There's a signature of tremendous emotional intelligence, emotional healing, smoothness, grace, flow. It's romantic and imaginative, but still pretty deep and spicy. Remember that, because it's also heading into a little sextile with Pluto at the very end of the sign, which I'm not going to cover formally. But the idea here with this trine is that you have a very watery, very romantic, otherworldly, imaginative, smooth, flowing connection between Venus and Neptune. For a lot of people, that will be experienced as profound depth and healing and openness in relationships. That can also be expressed in terms of an interest in things that are subtler, more mysterious, more sensual, more erotic or exotic. But also, the word that I would keep coming back to would be subtler or more emotional. It's about nuances in being able to read what's coming through the cracks of the tone of voice, or images and dreams that come through, or little synchronicities that you notice. And these will be heart opening and joyful and surprising and creatively fulfilling. That Venus trine Neptune is also like one of my favorite date night transits. I've said it a million times, but like if you're in a relationship, do something maybe a little edgy or a little spicy, a little sexy kind of, but also kind of romantic. This would be a good time to go to like a spa or something like that. So I couldn't recommend more highly the creative, healing, emotional, imaginative, and romantic connection of this transit, and taking advantage of it to do something creative, to do something with a friend that you love, or your lover, or whatever. And if you don't have anything else, if you don't have anyone else to connect with at the time, then find something in art or something you can watch or read that lights up this connection. This is also like great for looking at legacies of trauma and how we heal and move forward from those kinds of things. It's a nice way of looking at Venus and Scorpio trine to Neptune and Pisces. So anyway, that is, and then I'll just highlight, we can just go forward a little bit more. So when we get to December 29th, right around there, Venus will sextile Pluto, which also, a little sextile with Pluto is very brief because it moves into Sagittarius quickly. So I didn't include it in the formal list that I wanted to go through, but it is a nice little transit that will bring up, it kind of, I think it sort of ties the bow, a little bow around the top of the Venus and Scorpio gift that we've been given. It adds depth and a bit of intensity, a moment of emotional breakthroughs that can happen right around that time. So I thought this would be a good exercise for today, given that Venus is changing signs. We can take a look and say, hey, where's Venus going, and what can we expect? Now, I want to remind you before we end today that we need your help. We are trying to get to 1,777 backers. We need a bunch more people to pitch in and help us get there. So if you haven't already, please consider going over to the Kickstarter and supporting this channel. If you like this channel, know that a lot of work goes into it. The Kickstarter supports myself. It's part of how I earn my living. It supports the staff that supports the work. It supports all of the good work that we do in terms of the need-based tuition models, flexible pricing, the donation-based clinic we're building, the community herbal medicine garden where we host free events and give away free herbal medicine. So many things that we do are made possible because of your generosity. If you like this channel, if it gives you something good, if it helps you learn astrology, if it gives you something of spiritual value, please consider pitching in and supporting us. We have a ways to go yet before the New Year's, and we can't do it without you. All right, thanks so much, everybody. You can find that link to the Kickstarter in the comments section, pinned to the top, or in the description of this video. All right, have a good one. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.